Are we getting this whole hobby thing wrong when we're looking at how to grow the pie, so to speak, for the sports card market/hobby as we move forward? Today, this is the topic we are going to dive into. I'm reacting. It's a reaction video. They talk about some interesting topics within the hobby, and I always like to promote kind of thought-provoking videos that are looking at different sides of things. And so Simon466 Cards, I'm going to put his information in the video description. I'll throw pictures up here of actually a few channels. So Simon466 Cards, great channel. Cardboard Coaches had a wicked episode today. Very, very good. Mike's Retro Trading Cards, always good. The trio, I almost said duo, but no, it's a trio. And then History Through Cards - Shortcut. That's my friend Ryan McClanahan, who is a hobby historian, sports card historian. Spins some great tales about the history of cards, how it tied into the history of the day. Good stuff. So check out all of these channels. Real quick before I get into the video, I did get my Bart Starr SGC4. Thank you so much, Reed. This thing looks great in person. The centering on it is absolutely wicked. This was my target card for 2023. I made a video about this going back a few weeks, how I got it, a couple weeks. And then also just at the end of 2022 or maybe the beginning of 2023, I had this on my target list. And I was able to snag a good deal from Reed. Thank you. And as a throw-in, when he was a kid in Wisconsin, the Saints were at training camp nearby where he was. And so he actually got these in person. Jim Mora, you might know him from the playoffs. Dalton Hilliard. And then Morton Anderson, one of the greatest kickers of all time. These are all in-person autos, so very, very thankful. Thank you, Reed, for such a great deal and a great buying experience. I appreciate you. All right, so Simon466 Cards talks about a few different elements, and actually in his video talks about a couple different content creators and how they're looking at a particular subject and how he thinks that they might be a little bit off on their thinking. And the first one is Rob Veras, Burbank Cards, and how he's talking about, based on kind of his experience, his background, his longtime history in the hobby, ways to get young people into the hobby and how that should really be kind of a big focus, and talking about getting cards into gas stations and different things again. And we've kind of talked about that here as well. There's always a huge focus on the next generation coming up. You know, we need the next generation of collectors. The one thing that Simon points out that I think is an excellent point is the world has changed. Technology is inevitable. And if you need any further proof, look at ChatGPT. Go ahead and take a gander at that. If you want some nightmare fuel, check out ChatGPT and also some of the reactions around it. It's actually pretty smart, and that's AI that's really in its infancy. We'll see what that looks like in 15, 20, 25 years. I think that you probably know what it's going to be. Skynet.
Skynet defense system
We're in.
now activated.
Past the firewalls, local defense nets, Minutemen, and subs.
Skynet's fully operational, processing at 60 teraflops per second.
Sir, it should take less than a minute to find the virus and kill it.
All access inquiries to your supervisor.
Let's pray to God this works.
Skynet defense system now activated.
And so if you know a guy named John Connor, keep that guy safe. Don't keep him out of your sight. Keep him safe. All right, so technology taking over. It really is. I mean, if you go back 15 years, nobody had an iPhone. It was just in the beginnings, 2008, 2009. And now how many people own an iPhone? Hundreds of millions, maybe? A tremendous amount of people. It's become entrenched in our society. The digital world is upon us, whether we like it or not. When I was a kid, there wasn't even internet. Now the internet is evolving. Cell phones are evolving. Everything's evolving. We've got AI chat. You know, what's coming next? What technology are people in 15, 20, 25 years going to be using that they're not using now? We don't know what that is. And I know there's a lot of big jokes about virtual reality and Web3 and these sorts of things, augmented reality, but it's probably going to be a big thing in 15, 20, 25 years. It probably will. Technology evolves. That's just how it is. I'm sure that going back 25, 30 years ago, if you told people what folks were doing today in their everyday life, that they were just staring at their phone all day, that they have in their hand, that's also like a computer that's in their hand, they'd be like, whatever, you're an idiot. That's not going to happen. People are going to go outside. People are going to enjoy hanging out with people. Nope. We just want to be by ourselves on our phones. Speaking of technology, streaming platforms like Drip Marketplace, check them out. They've got comic books, they've got sports cards, they've got non-sports cards. If you want to check them out, go to my video description. I'll also pin a comment to take you to Drip Marketplace. Just another cool way to buy and sell sports cards and non-sports cards / culture cards collectibles. And so while it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Fanatics and their marketing arm and how they're going to market, it is going to be the ultimate test, because if Fanatics can't do it, meaning if Fanatics can't market to get people in, whether that be sports fans or just the mainstream, then nobody can. No one's going to have the resources or the want to do it the same way that Fanatics is, because trading cards ties into all their other stuff, apparel and everything else that they do own. And so if they can't do it, then I think that that'll be the case study that it just cannot be done. I've had certain comments of like, you don't find the hobby finds you. You have to be somewhat of a natural collector at heart to really get into cards. And I think that that's really a true thing. If you look at a lot of collectors in this space, they collect a lot of different things. I don't agree with a lot of Ziggy No's takes. He is a hobbyist / YouTuber that has plagued me by trolling me for years, but he has a good point when he talks about the opening packs and the element of young people getting into the hobby. A lot of it has to do with because their parents are into it. A lot of it is father-son. And it's like with me, I'm not really into fishing, not really much at all. But if my dad wants to go fishing, I'm going with him because I want to hang out with my dad. And I think that there is a lot of that now. 40-year-olds, 45-year-olds, 50-year-olds dominate the sports card space. Really 35 to 50. And you can just look at the YouTube analytics. Who are the viewers on this channel along with many of the other channels? It is 35 to 45 is the largest chunk. It's the people that were collecting as kids. And of course, they're getting their kids into it. And I'm not saying that some of it's not organic. It is. And there will be organic, kids that get into it because, oh man, they saw a Topps commercial and they're getting into it. But I think that we would be naive to think that there's not a lot of dads, mainly dads. There's moms as well. Don't get me wrong. But if we're going back to the 80s of which kids were collecting, mostly boys, mostly. And so you have parents that are getting young people into it because they want to be involved. They want to be cool like their parents. And then they turn into teenagers and then the reverse happens. They don't want to be cool like their parents. Actually, their parents are not cool at all. But my point is that Ziggy did have a good take there when he talks about the memories that are associated with hanging out with your dad with cards and how that's intertwined in somebody's childhood. That makes a lot of sense. And that's how a lot of this stuff does happen. Something else about today's world that's very different than when I was growing up and a lot of other hobbyists growing up that were collecting is the rise of sports betting and sports gambling. Going back 30 years ago, this was a no-no. This was way out of bounds, way off limits, not legal in any state in 1990. I don't think, maybe one or two, maybe in Nevada. But that's about it. Maybe in New Jersey, I'm not really sure. But the point is, not much. Now this is starting to expand out. Michael Rubin did not sell off 10% of his share of the 76ers because he thought maybe sports betting might become a thing. He knows it's a thing. He knows that states are starting to adopt this more. It's becoming more and more widespread. And it's going to be eventually probably that all 50 states or the majority of states are going to allow some sort of sports betting. What was the stat that we saw in Arizona? The Super Bowl was held in Arizona and there was something like hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people that bet on the game in Arizona. And that was the first time ever. It was a huge stat. And it just shows you how many people are interested in and maybe it's not betting $1,000, maybe it's betting $5 on the game or betting $5 on, the score at half, or something, derivatives trading essentially, where you're just betting on little pieces of the game. Who's going to be kicking off first? Who's going to be receiving in the second half? Which receiver is going to score a touchdown in the second half? Whatever. Somebody will want to throw down a bet just for fun. And that is all part of this thing. So sports cards have been wrapped into this world as well with breaking. Breaking is really a lot of the sports betting side. You're getting it, you buy into a break, and there's a chance that you could get into, a huge card. There's lottery tickets in these boxes. And prospecting in general, which goes back a long time. There's prospecting in the 80s. We've talked about it here. Many channels talk about that. The Greg Jeffries in baseball, the Harold Miners in basketball. I had Calbert Cheaney and Harold Miner rookie cards, Baby Jordan. Prospecting is not anything that's brand new. Prospecting is something that's as old as time. But what's different is now there's just a lot more money in it, and there is kind of a sports betting side to it. You can actually bet a lot on a Cade Cunningham card, whereas for me, Calbert Cheaney didn't have a RPA, a triple patch, National Treasures auto with a piece of the basketball that he had when he grew up as a kid in the card. Didn't exist. It was a very, very basic world. The world has changed. And so again, going back to what Simon was talking about here, the world's just different. You know, this hobby is different than it was 30 years ago, 50 years ago, 70 years ago. And with this video, I'm not really even talking about value of cards. So I know maybe some might take this as, oh, you're talking about like price points and will they rise or fall. I'm more just talking about interest, people getting into it, staying into it, the market behavior, not the actual price values for certain cards. Another good point that Simon kind of brings up, and I think it's a really valid point, is how many people are interested in sports, watch sports, but don't own sports cards? How many people watched this last Super Bowl? Like 1 billion? Literally, like maybe a couple of billion people watched the last Super Bowl. And how many people globally watching Patrick Mahomes do all the amazing stuff have a Patrick Mahomes card? You know, it's kind of that argument too when we were going back, a few years when Luka Doncic cards going crazy. And I remember hearing the argument of, oh man, well, how many fans does Luka have only in Asia? 1 billion. He's got fans all over the world. It's international. And it goes back to just because somebody is a sports fan doesn't mean that they want an autographed jersey or they want a card or a rookie card or an autographed card or any of that. They might, or you know what? They might want one of those items, but they're not really a card collector. It's more like, hey, I'd really like to have a cool item of sports memorabilia in my office. And that's their extent of being involved in the hobby. Look at our president, Joe Biden, right now. He has a Satchel Paige rookie card in the Oval Office. Is he watching YouTube content for sports cards? I hope so, but he's probably not. He's not watching it. He doesn't care. And most people, they might own some cards or whatever. They're not watching. They're not paying any attention to this hobby. They're not involved in it. I think that's another kind of interesting point of when you're talking about making the pie bigger. I think there's a lot of very just casual sports fans and also casual sports card collectors. They might only have a few cards or they might only want a couple of cards. They're like, you know what? Zion's my guy. I want to have a cool Zion card, color match. Second year Zion card. I just want to spend $25. And technically they're a card. They're in cards. They are in the hobby, but it's in a very small niche, And so this thing is so fragmented. There's so many factions that it's so hard to nail this thing down. But I thought this was really good because basically what Simon was getting at is the old way and the old thinking of how to grow the sports card hobby might not make sense in today's world. It just might not. The way that people buy and sell cards, it's probably going to change over time. All right, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I think it's an interesting topic, so thank you again to Simon466 Cards and lots of good thought-provoking videos over there. Stay healthy, stay awesome, and I will talk to you again later.